So, good morning. So, I'm speaking here from Yeshivat Dvar Yerushalayim. We've been in Har Nof now for many years, and we are neighbors and close friends of those who were killed and wounded yesterday. And obviously it's having upon us, many of us here in the yeshiva, of the former students, of the teachers, of those who pray with us, those who have hosted many of our students. So we share in their sorrow. And as our sages say, if a member of a certain group dies, all the members of that group should take it to heart. And when in our shechunah, Mountain of Beauty, it's a beautiful shechunah, and Hashem has given us also the ability to build our campus here. Part of it has been built, and to have so many bonds that tie us to what has happened. Then we have to take it to heart. And I will introduce the talk today with the translation into English from the great Gadol Hador, Rosh, who is really a model for all Am Yisrael, for the whole people, in his humility, in his constant desire to create unity and friendship, in addition to all the messages that he gives us. So this is the message which he gave out yesterday. It's also signed by Rav Edelman, as well as by Steinemann. He says, we don't know the intentions of heaven. Why did Hashem do this to us in such a manner? And we have to know that everything that happens is with an exact, just and compassionate outflow. And the sages said, we are now going through the birth pangs of the Mashiach. And this concept of Chavli Mashiach is that there are moments just before the baby is born when the pains for most mothers are unbearable. But they know that the new birth will come. So the sages say, what should a person do to be saved from these birth pangs? And the Rashi says, what are these birth pangs? These are the fears, physical fears, and all the vain aspects of life which come in those days from the armies and the forces of the idolatrous world. So what should a person do at that time? He has to busy himself with Torah, learning and fulfilling it, and with acts of loving kindness, of chesed. Therefore, let it all become stronger in Torah, everyone according to his ability, to learn more deeply. In Gemilut Chasadim, and also doing kindness, and also to follow the words of Hillel, the elder, who said, that which is hateful unto you, do not do to your fellow man. And we all need to turn into shuvah and penitence. And the heart of everyone knows the bitterness of his soul, what he has to change, of all the things in which he has to become stronger. And Hashem to take away from us his anger and terror and all forms of tragedies and sadness will no longer be heard. We who sign and join in Tzaran Shel Yisrael, the pain of the people of Israel. So, each one has to make his cheshbon hanefesh. And certainly, I have to do it. And I can't reveal in public the person cheshbon hanefesh, but I feel obligated to say a few things which I need to change, which have to do with you, with the yeshiva. And in which certainly I have been at fault. The sages say that if a person has Yirat Shamayim, then people will listen to him. And since so many things that I've said, I've asked from students, they don't listen to me, it's my fault. So I don't set a good enough example. So that's the first thing I want to apologize to the students of this yeshiva, also to the teachers, all those connected, and I want to ask forgiveness. It's part of fulfilling the situation. If I've offended anyone, sometimes I felt I had to speak sharply, even to make things difficult for some of the students, and have been able to pay up debts. I want to ask for forgiveness. Probably I did not try hard enough. So I'll try to improve. No, that's one aspect, personal aspect. And since these events happened, and I'm still suffering from the trauma of the events, and since we have in the last few months tried to uncover what's going on in the world today, from what we know from the Tanakh and from what the sages say, so I'm following here a principle that's already written by the prophets, who say, if any tragic event takes place anywhere in the world, so Hashem says, there are a number of verses of the prophets that say this. In fact, the expressions in Yeshaya, some of them in Chezkel, the prophets are that if cities become desolate, if there are tsunamis and storms, why do I, Hashem, allow this to happen, where people are killed? It's because I want you, the people of Israel, to learn from it, Ti'ach amati tikhu musa. We have to take musa from it. Whatever happens in the world. Because we don't know why all things happen. So many different things, but things which can't be easily attributed to human evil. And also by human evil it's given such enormous permission, as it were, from heaven to go ahead with it. Because surely Hashem still, to some extent, controls the world. And in more recent times we've had terrible things happening all over the world. Even when they have nothing to do with the people of Israel, we have to take a message. It's for us. Why for us? Because Hashem says, I've made you my representatives on earth. The purpose of the world is to create a heavenly kingdom. That means that the earthly world should be led by the heavenly compassion and blessing. And we've been told, so if something bad happens, we've got to think, what can we do to improve it? Doesn't mean we can understand it all. And to go a step further, the Horovitz Chaim, I know at the time of the Japanese war, when he found out about it, Jews weren't involved, he collected together his yeshiva and said, look, there are people being killed, thousands of people in the Japanese war in his time. Called them together and said, we have to change. It's a call to change, to wake up. But there's a further, and you can more or less give you the quotation from the Horovitz Chaim. He says it a few times in his writings. Today we don't have prophets. We do, Baruch Hashem, still have great sages, great scholars, give us some guidance. But prophecy we don't have. What do we have instead? Instead we have different things that happen. And Hashem often gives us messages through what's happening in the world. How much more so if those happenings are predicted in the Tanakh, in the Bible, or by the sages, then surely we have to learn from it. Doesn't mean we understand everything. Our mind is still more limited. But we can understand it in part. So I'm going to apply this to this series. And I'll put the question, let's put it this question. What is, we have today a movement of hate in the world which is made up of two different types of hatred. But they've joined together. Nazism, and today also neo-Nazism going on all over the world. A lot of it is kept underground, but unfortunately a lot of it is coming up from above the ground. You want to return to Nazi methods of propaganda and defamation and annihilation of the Jews. And to this we have most extreme examples of the wildness, which is almost like a mania of Muslim hatred. It does not mean to say that these powers in the Western world, in the Middle Eastern world, they engulf all of the Gentile world. No. There are very many in the Western world, as well as amongst the Muslims, although they're more silent, that don't wish to have destruction. And unfortunately, the destructive elements, not only against the Jewish people, but against whatever Judaism represents, with the pursuit of virtue, and morality, and also belief in a moral God. And we have a terrible combination, which beforehand was not combined in such a manner. This is a new phenomena, both in quantity as well as in quality. So we have to find out, what does it all mean? So there is a well-known saying, you want to have up-to-date Judaism, just read the Parsha of the week and you'll find it there. So I want you, let's all turn to the text where this is clearly indicated. In the Parsha we're going to read on Shabbos, where we read about Esav and Yaakov. So let's find it in Jerusalem Bible. It says that when Esav saw that the blessing Yitzchak gave over to Yaakov, he also received the blessing from Yitzchak, but he was disappointed. But he also saw that not only Rivka, his mother, probably knew all along, but also his father was very particular that they should have a wife not from the Canaanites. And Esav, if you look first on page 29, that's chapter 26 of Reshis, verse 34, when Esav was 40 years old, he took as a wife Yehudit, but Beri Achiti, from the Hittite people, and Posmat, also the Hittite people, but Elon Achiti. And it says they were Morat Ruach, and he saw also that this was causing bitterness of spirit to Yitzchak and Rivka, to both of them, to Yitzchak also. This has brought an introduction to the whole episode of the blessing of Yitzchak, which turned out to be Yaakov, and he obviously understood that the fact that he'd chosen such a wife was causing bitterness even to Yitzchak, who all the time had reared him also with love. And then, of course, he was filled with hate against Yaakov, and even Rivka found out that, as it says 2 pages later, page 31, if you look in chapter 27, verse 42, the words of her son Esav, that he wanted to just wait after the father died, and then he would go and kill Yaakov. That was his intention, it says in the previous verse. And these words, someone told over to Rivka, you should know that's what he intends to do. So she went and called Yaakov her son, and said, Esav, he wants to kill you. So please listen to my voice, go and flee to Lavan, and stay there. Why should I lose both of you in one day if he'll kill you? And him I've lost, because he'll be the murderer. So then Rivka said to Yitzchak, these daughters of Chet, or the wives of Esav, they make my life abominable. If Yaakov will also come to take one of the daughters of Chet, why have I come into this world to live? So Yitzchak said to Yaakov, you go, don't take any of the daughters of the Canaanites and the Hittites, but go to our family and find a good wife from there. Hashem should bless you. You look a few verses later, that means in chapter 28, on the same page, verse 8, Esau saw how evil the daughters of Canaan were in the eyes of Yitzchak his father. He was very close to him. Esau went to Ishmael, and he took Mochalat bat Ishmael ben Avraham. So he thought, surely this is good. Ishmael was also favored by Avraham. I'm taking his daughter, and she'll be my wife. I'll keep the other wives as well. Wasn't good. Wasn't ready to give up the other wives. But he says, this will surely please Yitzchak, that I'm taking the daughter of Ishmael. Especially as this is getting near the time of the death of Avraham Avinu. And what do we see at the death of Avraham Avinu? A bit later in this parsha, that that's even later on. Later on in the parsha it says, when Avraham died, which is not much after this time, Ishmael did teshuvah already. Because at the burial, what was the whole argument of Ishmael and Yitzchak? Who's going to inherit the house? So Ishmael had to leave the house, he dealt with in previous year, but he did teshuvah. Because he recognized Yitzchak is the firstborn. He allowed him to precede him in the burial of Abraham. So he thought, Esau thought, I'm going to take the daughter of Ishmael, be fine for me. By the way, from this, why do you have the name Mochalat? What do we learn out from here? Do any of you know from this word Mochalat? What does limchol mean? Mechila. What's mechila mean?
Ask for forgiveness.
Slach lanu avinu mechal lanu kifashanu. What's mechila mean?
Forgiveness.
To forgive. So the sages learn out from this wedding between Esau and Mochalat that when a person gets married, all his sins are forgiven. The implication is, even if the Chatan has been as wicked as Esau, even when he's still got the intention, so it would appear, he did have the intention in any case, to go and kill his brother as soon as the father dies. Yeah. That doesn't say he gave up intention. But if with a moment of marriage, you become a new person and you can be forgiven for all your sins. This is why the Gemara says, if there's a person who's wicked, even if he's a completely wicked person like Esau, and when he gets married, he said, Hari at mekudeshet li, which you're learning now. That to get married, you've got to say, Chatan has to say to the Kala, hereby you become sanctified to me, but he can make conditions, which she would agree to. So here was a case of a Rosh, and the Kala was a tzaddikas, let's say, a very fine girl. So she wouldn't marry him because he's wicked. But then he said, I am willing to make a condition to marry you, Almanot Shani Tzaddik, on condition that I'll be a saint. Even if he's wicked to this minute, if he makes the condition of marriage, I'm going to be a saint, forgiven. And it's Kiddushin, because if you make a condition, it's not fulfilled, it's not Kiddushin. It's called a valid marriage. Why? Because maybe he had deep remorse at the moment of marriage, and thereby he becomes a different person. He says, he's a tzaddik, and she accepts it. If you're a tzaddik, even though your record shows you're a criminal and a Rosh, I accept it. From whom did you learn it? For the marriage between the daughter of Ishmael, called Mochalat, forgiveness, and Esav Harasha. Now we're going to go more deeply into Bereshit, as we've done in the past Shiurim. Bereshit is filled with many different episodes. Some of them have to do with mitzvot. Some of them quite clearly have to do with what was happening in that original family of Avraham Avinu, his descendants. But at the same time, it's something else. It's also Masa Avot Siman Lebanim. Whatever is told there about our forefathers, as we've so often explained, has to do, like the seed produces a tree and fruit and branches, so the seeds of the life of the people of Israel has its seeds, its roots. The seed transform into roots, saplings, and then into a whole tree until you have the fruits. And the seeds are underground, maybe, in the text of the Chumash. So the sages say the marriage in Esav and Ishmael, which took place then, is a premonition of what's going to happen before the redemption. Before the redemption, the powers of Ishmael, the negative powers of Ishmael, and the negative powers of Esav will combine to be the Chavle Leda, the most terrible birth pangs before the redemption. And even to give a mashal, what happens with seeds? How do seeds produce saplings? First, they rot. The seeds have to rot, disintegrate. There are various elements of those seeds gathered together again after being rotten. And then they produce the first shoots, just of some of the little roots, and then the little green grass that comes up to produce a sapling. Then you have to transfer it to a different type of, generally speaking, with many of them, to a different type of fruit bed or flower bed. Then produces trees. Trees can become enormous trees, produce fruit. And therefore also, the powers of Ishmael and Esav, the seeds are described in the Chumash, as already shown. Ishmael was described as Pere Adam, and being one who controls the whole world, or wants to control the whole world. And that's only happened more recently. It was developing already in the Middle Ages, but it did not exist in the time of the Romans. They were small, but they were Bedouins all over the place. But what's mentioned in the Chumash concerning Ishmael's future, and it's expressed clearly in the promise to Avraham Avinu, will be a great nation, who will have 12 major tribes before the 12 tribes of Israel came into view, and then he'll become a world power. And the same is said concerning Esav. Same thing will happen to him as well. It says, in fact, in this week's Pasha, you're going to live by the sword, which is not a reference only to Esav as a person. It's a reference to the negative qualities of destructivity which is developed through Esav in different ways. Ethnically in part, but more culturally, more in concepts of life's outlook. And you'll follow your method and become a world power, world civilization, which developed. 4 empires came the culmination with Rome, and with, we could say, the power of pragmatic control of the world through West civilization, and which contains an aspect of hatred towards Yaakov. And it says, it says, Hayedai with the Esav. Yes, Esav's going to have power. But Hakol Kol Yaakov. What's the power of Yaakov is his voice, his message, his prayer, his learning. And therefore, as long as we have learning, as we learn now, learning and words of kindness, words of love, and we have words of learning and words of prayer, we'll have strength. But if we're weak, in fact, look carefully in the Parsha, Hakol Kol Yaakov, the first one is Hakel Yaakov. When the voice of Yaakov is weak, then the voice of Esau will become strong. And today we're faced with the situation of the marriage between the forces of Esav and Ishmael, referred to in the Parsha. And that's going to bring the world to the brink of complete destruction. That's what it says in the sages. When the powers of evil of Yaakov and Esav get together, it's the worst thing that can happen to mankind. Now, we spoke already about this a little bit, but I'm going to continue the theme. That it says in the end of the book of Proverbs concerning Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor. It says, Doshot Tzemer of Hishtim, that she seeks out wool and flax. Bataz Bechevetz Kapeh, and she uses both her hands, the right and the left, to go and produce nice garments. That's the woman of valor. Because Eshet Chayil says the ideal woman is one who looks after her home all the time. Sophia Alechot Beita, as we say. She looks after all the needs of her household. Same time, she's also engaged in business, in making a livelihood. So she deals in textiles. Also Kinir Soicha, she's almost like does a lot of even world business with ships, making business with different countries. So all these things have a deeper significance. And the Midrash interprets, or let's say applies, Eshet Chayil can be applied to every person's wife. Yeah. In fact, they say, famous statement, one of the Rebbes, they asked him, why do you say Shelo Sani Isha? Yeah. Or all the women, if we praise Hashem, that we've been made, we're not been made Gentiles, we've been made Jews. It's a special privilege because we have more mitzvahs. We say Shelo Zana Isha because we've got more mitzvahs than the women. So some say everyone has to say it on his own wife. Shelo Zana Isha goes on your own wife. In other words, my wife is not my clone. So they've been cloning, yeah? Because marriage is a marriage of two opposites. So it says, Lo Sani Isha, because that way I find fulfillment, I become greater. I'm not just duplicate. Asa connector means she's a help because she's opposite me. She fills in those roles I can't fulfill. Which applies also to, let's say, even to birth. I mean, the man can't fulfill birth. He can't fulfill feeding the little babies from his own breast. He can't do it. And there's so many other things that women can do and the man can't do. And therefore we say, I've given him my role, she's got her role. And that way we have the greatest happiness because each one finds his own fulfillment in the help that he gains from the person who's opposite him. But the sages say, after all, the Mishlei, if we apply it to the model, to some extent model for mankind. But Avram and Sarah, this couple, was to bring blessing to all the families, all human beings. And if all human beings would then become part of it, it'd be marvelous. And as way I've explained to you, even as far as inheritance is concerned and so on, it's indicated in the Chumash Bereshis that why was Avram so keen on Ishmael? Even after he had Yitzchak, he wanted Ishmael as well. I want them both. Why? I need now Yitzchak to make the covenant of the priestly nation. I need Ishmael to bring the message from God to mankind, all human beings. That's the purpose of Ishmael. And there are some, even today, there's some Ishmaelites who still believe in it, Baruch Hashem. They say Ishmael was intended, and Islam is intended to go and bring the message of the Noahide code to all mankind. They believe in one God only. If they fulfill the Noahide code, then it says, you should love the Ger, what the Geret Toshav. We are the Kohanim, just like a Kohen. We can't go to racialism, that the Jews can't make the blessing in the morning for the rest of the congregation. It's not racialism. The Kohen has got a special task. And the Jewish people have a task to be like priests to all the nations of the world. But how will the message come more directly to the nations of the world? Through Ishmael. That when Ishmael did Teshuvah, which refers to the time Messianic age, that's what's going to happen. And the minority today that exists, there is such a minority, and perhaps the greatest scholar on Islam today is the professor and the head of the Faculty of Islam of Rome University, and he believes in this. He says that's the true interpretation of the Quran, and not the Mufti's distortions, which produced the massacre of 100 years ago of Yeshiva Bochrem, which is a similar massacre that we experienced yesterday. That's what happened, a whole yeshiva. And we should know Hamas have not given up. They're threatening similar things. The situation is extremely critical today. We have to give strength to this Muslim scholar who's been here to Israel as well, and who keeps on saying Islam has been distorted. What the Mufti of Jerusalem did, the massacre, to go in Hebron where the Jews and Arabs were basically living at peace one with the other, on the basis we've described. And the rabbis of the old Yishuv, they used to, on the whole, manage to create a peaceful relationship. But the Mufti who brought in this terrible extremism, and he afterwards became a partner with Hitler. And he's the one who's responsible to the manifesto, produced by both of them together, but they say he made it up, that every Jew in the world has got to be annihilated. And he prepared death camps here in Palestine for all the Jews. I mean, this is, I see now in the papers they compared to Chalmdiki, but under Mufti it happened already. Worse, I mean, there were, that's why it's called Hebron Yeshiva, or those in Yerushalayim, because they had escaped from Hebron because of this. So, and now it's a very serious situation we're in. And the situation is, Nazism is used by the Muslim propaganda machine. They accuse of all the tools which are used by the Nazis. And Baruch Hashem, meanwhile, they're not organized into a huge power like the Nazis did with their powerful organization, but still they're using whatever they can of the Nazi heritage to pass it on and put it in its new aspect of extreme Muslim cruelties. And it's not surprising that Daesh are getting so many people from the West to join them. But what's happened to them? Have they become? Maybe most of them are criminals. Okay, criminals join in a criminal huge organization which have a lot of money. Because they've got oil, they've got piles of money. So they join them. But I don't think they're all criminals. Some of them, they get brain contaminated, start joining them. It's unbelievable. So it shows that this is becoming a destruction of the Tzelem Elokim, of the divine image, making human beings like animals. And we feel it here. We feel it. See, anyone who's got in his mind what happened yesterday, you can't escape a person's conscience and consciousness. So, question is, what is the root of it? So it's Tzema or Fishtim. And we explained already, I'll just impart, we'll have to take it further, I must give you a chance for questions, but I already told you, Tzema or Fishtim represents something. In fact, the battle between Cain and Hevel was also a battle between those who produce wool and those who produce flax. Those who cultivate sheep and those who cultivate the ground. Because flax comes from the ground and wool comes from the sheep. So the first, we can call it, a murder of 1/4 of mankind was the battle in Cain and Hevel. And when Cain said, you know, it's not my fault, so Hashem says, it is your fault. Why is it his fault? Because you give him freedom. I give you freedom to cultivate the earth, to also use the animals for human needs. You do that. And instead of that, you're using your power for destruction because you're jealous of your brother. So you kill him. It's very serious. This is the mark of Cain, which today is on the heads of a good half of mankind, either guilty through direct murder or guilty through standing aside when people are being murdered left, right and center. And today that's the mark of Cain on all civilization. And we've got to change. The question is how? So we've already explained a little bit about the depths of this concept of Tzema or Fishtim. And it's not for nothing the sages say that if Tzema or Fishtim are all together, are joined together, it'll bring out the destruction of the world. Similarly, they say when Ishmael and Esav's hate movements join together, it will destroy all mankind. So what are we going to do about it? So that we'll have to deal with next time. But I think it needs investigation, and there's so much that can be learnt from the Tanakh, from the Bible, for Jews and Gentiles alike. And we've got to go ahead from it, each one of us, in our personal life, in our family life, in our common life, in our national life, and in our human international life. So I've given you plenty of things to think about. Maybe tomorrow, beginning of this year, I'd like to hear your reactions. You think about it as well. Let's hear your actions first and then we'll continue.